The story of Jaci Dugard. This is the haunting story of Jaci Dugard, a girl stolen from her world at age 11 and held captive for 18 long years. A story of love twisted into control and the unbreakable spirit that refused to be silenced. On June 10th, 1991, the morning started like any other for 11-year-old Jaci Dugard in South Lake Tahoe, California. The sun shone brightly over the quiet, tree-lined neighborhood as Jaci walked to her school bus stop, her blonde hair catching the light. She was a shy, bright girl who loved animals and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Her stepfather, Carl Probin, watched from a distance as she made her way up the hill, a routine he followed to ensure her safety. But that day, safety was an illusion. A gray sedan pulled up beside Jaci. Philip Garrido, a 40-year-old convicted sex offender, sat behind the wheel, his wife Nancy beside him. Philip had been released on parole after serving time for a 1976 kidnapping and rape. He was a predator with a history of violence, and Jaci was his next target. As Jaci approached the bus stop, Philip used a stun gun to incapacitate her. Nancy helped drag the girl into the car. Carl Probin, witnessing the abduction from afar, raced after the vehicle on his bicycle but couldn't catch up. In an instant, Jaci was gone, leaving behind a community in shock and a family shattered. The abduction was meticulously planned. Philip had scouted the area, choosing a vulnerable child in a moment of solitude. His parole status, meant to restrict his movements, was loosely monitored, allowing him to operate freely. The audacity of the crime, snatching a child in broad daylight, reflected Philip's confidence in evading justice. For Jaci, the world she knew vanished as she was driven to a hidden compound in Antioch, California, about 120 miles away. The Garridos' property was a labyrinth of makeshift structures, tents, and sheds, concealed by high fences and overgrown vegetation. In this isolated prison, Jaci's nightmare began. Philip, a self-proclaimed religious zealot, believed he was chosen by God for a divine mission. He used this delusion to justify his actions, telling Jaci she was part of his sacred plan. He called her Alyssa, stripping her of her identity, and subjected her to relentless psychological manipulation. Philip's version of love was a grotesque weapon. He claimed to care for Jaci, providing her with food, clothing, and even moments of feigned kindness, like giving her a pet cat. Yet these acts were intertwined with horrific abuse. Jaci endured repeated sexual assaults, which Philip framed as expressions of affection within his warped ideology. Nancy, complicit and enabling, oscillated between playing the role of a caring figure and a jealous accomplice, further confusing Jaci's sense of reality. At 14, Jaci gave birth to her first daughter in the backyard prison, with no medical assistance. 3 years later, she had a second daughter. Philip, who fathered the children, portrayed himself as a devoted family man, creating a perverse mimicry of domestic life. Jaci was forced to raise her daughters in captivity, teaching them to read and write with whatever resources she could scavenge. She clung to hope, writing in secret journals about her dreams of freedom and her love for her daughters, whom she shielded from the worst of their reality. The psychological toll was immense. Philip controlled Jaci through fear, isolation, and gaslighting, convincing her that the outside world was dangerous and that he was her protector. He used religious rhetoric to justify his actions, claiming voices from angels guided him. Jaci, stripped of agency, adapted to survive, developing a complex bond with her captors, akin to Stockholm Syndrome. Yet her resilience shone through in small acts of defiance, like hiding her true thoughts and nurturing her daughter's spirits. How could a kidnapping last 18 years undetected? The answer lies in a series of systemic failures and Philip's cunning. Despite his criminal history, Philip's parole supervision was lax. Officers visited his home multiple times, but never searched the backyard, where Jaycee and her daughters were hidden. Neighbors reported strange noises and sightings of children, but police dismissed these as insignificant. The Garridos' ability to blend into their community, with Philip running a printing business and presenting himself as a reformed man, deflected suspicion. Nancy played a critical role as an enabler. Described as submissive yet complicit, she helped maintain the facade of normalcy. She shopped for groceries, interacted with neighbors, and even took Jaycee and her daughters on rare outings, tightly controlling their behavior to avoid detection. The couple's religious veneer, including Philip's claims of divine visions, further disarmed those around them. To outsiders, they appeared eccentric but harmless. The case exposed glaring flaws in the parole system. Philip's prior conviction should have flagged him as a high-risk offender, yet he slipped through the cracks. Budget cuts, overworked parole officers, and a lack of coordination between agencies contributed to the oversight. The tragedy wasn't just Jaycee's captivity, but the missed opportunities to rescue her, each one a betrayal of public trust. The unraveling of the Garridos' house of cards began in 2009, when Philip's erratic behavior finally drew scrutiny. He had grown increasingly bold, distributing religious pamphlets and claiming to hear divine voices. On August 24th, he visited the University of California, Berkeley, seeking permission to hold a religious event. Accompanied by Jaycee's daughters, whom he presented as his own, his bizarre demeanor alarmed campus police. Officer Lisa Campbell and her colleague ran a background check, uncovering his criminal history. When questioned, Philip spun a convoluted story, but the officers pressed further. He returned the next day with Jaycee, Nancy, and the girls. During the interview, Jaycee, still under the weight of 18 years of manipulation, initially hesitated to reveal her identity. But as the officers separated her from the Garridos, her resolve strengthened. She wrote her true name, Jaci Dugard, on a piece of paper, a quiet act of reclaiming her identity. The truth unraveled quickly. Jaycee was the missing girl from 1991, and the nightmare was over. On August 26, 2009, the Garridos were arrested. Philip faced charges of kidnapping, rape, and false imprisonment, while Nancy was charged as an accomplice. Jaycee was reunited with her family, including her mother, Terry Probin, who had never stopped searching for her. The reunion was bittersweet. Jaycee was free, but the years lost could never be regained. Her daughters, now 11 and 15, faced the challenge of adapting to a world they had never known. Jaycee's return to society was a journey of healing and resilience. She moved to an undisclosed location with her mother and daughters, supported by therapy and a settlement from the state of California, which acknowledged its failure to monitor Philip adequately. In 2011, she published A Stolen Life, a memoir detailing her ordeal with raw honesty. The book became a bestseller, offering insight into her survival and strength. Jaycee founded the JAYC Foundation to support families recovering from trauma, channeling her pain into purpose. Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years in prison, and Nancy received 36 years to life. Their convictions brought some measure of justice, but they couldn't erase the trauma. Jaycee's daughters, raised in captivity, faced unique challenges integrating into society, yet their mother's love and determination provided a foundation for their recovery. The case sparked national conversations about parole reform, child safety, and the psychological impact of long-term captivity. Jaycee's story highlighted the resilience of the human spirit, but also the devastating consequences of systemic neglect. Her ability to rebuild her life, raise her daughters, and advocate for others is a testament to her strength. Jaci Dugard's story is a harrowing exploration of love twisted into a tool of control. Philip Garrido's manipulation, using affection, religion, and fear to dominate, reveals the dark potential of psychological abuse, yet Jaycee's survival underscores the power of hope and maternal love. She protected her daughters in unimaginable circumstances, preserving their innocence even as her own was stolen. From a broader perspective, the case forces society to confront uncomfortable truths. How do predators exploit trust? Why do systems fail the vulnerable? The oversights in Philip's parole supervision reflect a broader issue of prioritizing punishment over prevention. Jaycee's advocacy through her foundation pushes for better support for trauma survivors, emphasizing prevention and recovery. Her story also challenges the narrative of victimhood. Jaycee is not defined by her suffering, but by her courage to reclaim her life. She gardens, rides horses, and cherishes time with her family, finding joy in the ordinary. Her daughters, now young women, carry forward her resilience, a legacy of love triumphing over evil. Jaycee's ordeal lasted 6,573 days, 18 years of stolen time. Yet her story is not just one of loss, but of reclamation. Through her words and actions, she reminds us that even in the darkest captivity, the human spirit can find a way to shine.